Okay, so you know what? Before we go forth, let's do a little housekeeping, shall we? Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on the video. This is my review for Interview with the Vampire. This is episode 5. This is my review for episode 5, which is titled A Vile Hunger for Your Hammering Heart. Um, yeah. Again, these long poetic titles, but if that this one fits. But anyway, like I said, let's do a little housekeeping before I go forth, and I'm gonna make this very quick. Um, with those of you who have been with me for a while, you know that I have stayed away from streamed series. It's taken me a long time to go ahead and agree to do series that are streamed and trying to figure out the best way with what it is that I do to actually do it. And um, the reason being is this: it it tends to. I know you get excited. I know you get excited about what you've already seen, and then I beg you all, don't run ahead. Don't run ahead. Don't run ahead. But you have a tendency to run ahead. And it's not everybody, just some people will run ahead. It was really, really bad in episode 4. Episode 4, people ran ahead so far that it literally ruined episode 5 for me, to the point that I didn't even want to watch episode 5. I literally was like, well, I might as well just drop this and then I'll just come back later, because it just left such a bad taste in my mouth. It ruined it just ruined the whole flow that I actually had, excuse me, for this series. I dealt with a lot when I was doing the Jeffrey Dahmer Netflix series. I ran into a lot in the comments where people had actually watched ahead and they were commenting, but it was more of a, no, you're wrong about this. No, you're wrong about that. Oh, no, you forgot this. You forgot that. And every time I hadn't forgot anything, it was literally in another episode that was further on. So that kind of thing is why I shied away from things that were actually a streamed situation, or things where I'm actually trying to play catch up. So that's why I actually haven't done it. And this episode 4, the comments in episode 4, it literally had just ruined it. And like I was ready to turn it loose. But there's only 7 episodes total, I think, in this. So it's only a little bit more to go. But I got the whole thing. I deliver, what I deliver is a review which is my absolute response to what I've watched. It's my response to what I've watched. It's a genuine response to what I've watched. I can't give you that if I already know what I'm looking for. And I just feel like if I already know what I'm looking for, or I already know the story, or I already know what's going to happen, there really is no purpose for what it is I do, because there's nothing genuine about it. It's not a, it's not a reaction to, it's kind of a recap of something that you don't need a recap of. If you've seen it, you don't need me to tell you what you saw. You're actually coming for what I think about. And that's what most of my comments are when you all ask me to do stuff. You're asking me, I want to know what you think about this. And running ahead and tell, like the whole thing with Claudia. Claudia didn't die, you guys. I got it. But I didn't get the chance to experience it. You all told me that she didn't die. You all told me, oh, just wait and see. Well, she's going to do this, and this. I was like, okay. But anyway, so this is what I'm gonna do. We ain't gonna change what we do. By all means, write your comments when I ask you what you think, because I want to know what you think too about what I've said. Write your comments, but I'm just going to tell you, if you don't get a response, don't feel badly. I'm not going to read any of the comments until the series is done. Once the series is done, I'll go back and then I'll look at the comments. But from this point going forward, we're going to do what we're doing. We're going to roll on, have a good time, but I'm not going to read the comments. I'm going to shut off my notifications where I don't get notifications in the middle of the day telling me that somebody's saying whatever. I'm going to shut them off, and then I'll read the comments when we have concluded the series. So we're going to have our same fun that we've had, but it's just going to be a little bit delayed. That's all. That's how, it took me all day to figure out how to fix the problem. I fixed it. I think I fixed it. So I hope you all don't take this too unkindly, because I know y'all like talking to me and I like talking to you too. But I got to do this because I have to protect the authenticity of my reviews. And this is the only way to do it. This is the only way to do it. So, okay. Now we're done with that. We are done with that. We have slayed the dragon for that little situation, and we can basically now move on. All right. So, episode 5, interview with the vampire. A vile hunger for your hammering heart. Boom. We're sitting here. When we come in, we see Louis is at the end of the table feeding on Rashid. And I said, okay, so Rashid is a subject, just like some of the other guys, but it's a little different. And it is a little different. Rashid is special. Okay. Rashid is special. And I think Louis has a thing for Rashid, but I think Louis is guarded. He doesn't even want to have another relationship. So I think that's the place that Rashid is actually standing in, because Rashid actually said at one point, he had said to Daniel, when this is printed, what do you think is going to happen? This is sort of like a suicide mission, because all the other vampires are going to come. They're going to come to Dubai. They're going to scale this building, and they're going to spray the walls with his blood. This is a suicide mission. And Louis said, Daniel, Rashid is very opinionated. A lot of times, even when his opinion hasn't even been asked for. And Rashid said, I care for him more than I think he even cares for himself. So Rashid is actually in love with Louis, but Louis is not in a place to actually give that back. Strangely enough, I kind of understand that. Really bad relationships will actually do that for some people. You just don't want to mess with it. You just, it's the feelings are, child, bang you down. But to be intertwined with you, to be in a full-on entanglement, there's a little bit more, and sometimes maybe you just don't feel like giving that. And that's what I think is happening with Rashid and Louis. I think Louis really does care for Rashid. And just the way he spoke about him, he read Daniel's mind, and he told Daniel, like he literally knew what Rashid weighed and how his weight goes up and down and it fluctuates. And he asked, do you want to know how he tastes? And all, I said, oh, stop it, honey. Now, that's what I'm talking about, Louis. That's the way you want. Well, that's the way I want somebody to love me. Somebody who says they love me, I want them to love me like that. I want them to be so entangled and so in tune. That's what I want. That's what I want. And I will not settle for anything less than that. And then there's other work that I have to do on myself so I can actually return that to them without being afraid to engulf myself in that. But that's a whole other thing. We're not here psychoanalyzing me, or are we? Yeah. Back off my soapbox, but boom, bam, and I'm back. But I was here for that. I thought it was sexy. He went all the way down. All the way down into his blood counting. I said, oh, Louis. So there's that thing. Now we understand Rashid and what Rashid's real situation is and why he basically has run of the house, because he tastes good. Get into it. Anyway, so Daniel's down there, and he says he's reading these comments. He's still reading Claudia's books. He has his little white gloves on and everything. And he basically he's like, this is a kill list. It's the last thing that these people said before she took their lives. And again, she has that sadistic nature of Lestat, and she has the mind of a teenager wrapped with the mind of a grown woman, a vicious grown woman. So she does these things, because only somebody of a teenage mind would actually record that kind of thing. Somebody very narcissistic and sadistic would be recording those things and then leave it around. That's the teenage mind, leave it around where somebody can find it. So that's that whole thing. So then we go and we see this whole thing where there's Louis and Lestat, and they're having this conversation. It's about Claudia. Okay. So that we're back in time at this point. And Louis is worried about her because he thinks that she's not feeding. Like they've gotten to her, they've scolded her and everything about her wrongdoings, and that she's not feeding at this point, and he's worried about her. She hasn't been over coffin. Lestat's like, Louis, she's fine. She's fine. And Lestat really doesn't care for Claudia very much. He don't care for her. And he's like over it. And he doesn't like the whole situation of the connection that her and Louis have. So he don't want to hear it. He really doesn't want to hear it, but he sees her. He knows she's going through, but he also knows she's sneaky and she's out doing whatever. So he literally kicks the top off of her casket and see that it's empty and the diaries are in there. And then they end up, well, he didn't want to do it, but Lestat took and was reading in her diary, which ended up forcing Louis to actually read in the diary to figure out what was going on. It was some real disturbing stuff about the killing and how she was doing it, what she was doing. And then basically that she's actually out having sex and wondered, it's basically she was young. She's 14. She's 14. And every time she has sex, it's like having her cherry popped. And that's her, like that's in her book of like every time, is this going to happen each time? And I gotta heal again all over again. Yeah, unfortunately, that's where you're at, honey. You hadn't been pushed forward in your human life. So wherever you are, that's where you stay. So every time, baby, they're gonna pop your cherry every time. Yeah. And I guess if you run into one that don't pop your cherry, you're going to kill him and be mad at him any old way. Oh, Lord, Claudia. Claudia said that's the whole mess with her. So the diaries have been read. Also in diaries are how much she hates them and how much she resents them and how much she blames them. So all that did was add to how much Lestat really don't like Claudia. Okay. Louis, it hurts Louis's feelings that she has these type of ill feelings toward him. Then they end up confronting her, catch her coming in, they confront her. And they says, well, what about the bodies? What did you do with the bodies? And she says, Louis told her, what she said, I threw them in the lake or whatever. He says, well, what happens when the storms come? What's going to happen naturally when the storms come and the water moves? The bodies have actually been discovered. Now, in the midst of all that, old Tom is back. Tom has this meeting with Louis and Lestat and basically threatens them because he's going for a state seat at this point. Old Tom, the politics Tom. And he's going for the state seat. And he has this campaign going. He wants considerable donations from Lestat and Louis. Now he's going to hold them. He's going to bend them both over, baby, and don't grease them up with this. He wants this money and push and wants their backing, and tells them basically, there's 56 bodies found. And surely everything is going to point towards you all, because if not, he's going to make it point toward them. And yeah, it just is what it is. And you'll acquiesce so I can keep the law away from you. So Lestat didn't appreciate it. He froze the room and he put a cross on his face with his fingernail. I said, oh, Lestat. But by the time they got home, the law had already been there. They are basically raiding the house. They're raiding the house. And Claudia's drunk. She's drunk. Remember, she's a 14-year-old. So now there'd be a question about this young girl being drunk, her being left home alone, and there with wine and spirits and all of this kind of carrying on. They told her, you go to your room, this, that, and the other. Also, what had been talked about by Tom was these, looks like whoever the serial killer was keeping souvenirs. So Claudia goes, they told her, you go clean your room, young lady. And of course, Louis then gave her honey, she ran up there. She got fingers here, breasts there, this, that, just a very serial killer, sadistic mess she got going on up there. So she's trying to hide everything in her room. She also has a man in the room who she had actually been feeding on. She hadn't killed him. And we found out later she was trying to make a mate for herself. This is why he wasn't dead. She had him tied up. He was stuffed in a closet and just a whole mess. And she was trying to hide, they bust down her door from the outside. And she said, oh, I'm trying to get dressed. And they, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. It's that kind of time. And closed the door. Thank goodness. The man was in there. He was still saying, she had him all bound and gagged. She's up there trying to make him. And they found that out later. But just a whole mess. Just a whole mess. Claudia, a mess. And she keeps the mess going. She's full of drama. So that was that. Once the police leave and everything, they get it cleared up. That's when they found out she's been trying to make make a mate for herself. She said, you two have each other. Then Louis actually, and y'all both have me. So y'all got two. I don't have anything that I can love or love me back. And why won't you make me one? So trying to beg Lestat to do it or Louis to do it. And Louis basically, Lestat told her, you were a mistake. You were a mistake. You shouldn't have been made. And now we're not making you something else. And you can't make one because you're not strong enough. And she's threatening them, telling, I'll leave and go find other vampires. You go do what you want to do. He kept telling her, you think I'm bad. The other vampires out there are 10 times worse, 10 times more vile, and they just aren't good people. You don't want to do that. She ends up reading Lestat's mind, and she ends up telling Louis, he's grown tired of us, Daddy Lou. He's tired of us, the housewife and the mistake. He's sick of us. You should come with me. And then she ran away. She ended up running away. And that's that. So we flip back to real time. We got Daniel and Louis going on. They having this little thing about it. And Daniel's saying, she's a gold mine. She's a gold mine. Now, in real time, he's like, people are going to love her. They're going to have Claudia costumes and this, that, and the other. She's like this torn, she's this torn individual. She's very interesting. Her story, she got a whole lot. She's a very colorful character. People are going to love her. And he said, I will not have her exploited. That was Louis. He doesn't want people thinking badly of her or to have her exploited because, again, he is her father. And he just, regardless of what it is and how it goes down, he will not have his baby being spoken badly, no matter how broken she is. But Daniel was exactly right, because that's how this social media thing works. So he's like, hey, there's nothing I can do about it. I really can't. There's nothing I can do about it. So she runs away. Louis going through it, at the fact that she ran away. The two of them basically go underground at that point. They're not being the socialite anymore. And there's a constant argument about whose fault it is that she left. Of course, it's Lestat's fault somewhat. Claudia is just Claudia. That's the other part of it. She can't be contained. She's like a little wild dog. She's just like Lestat. And it just, just is what it is. So as she's out here in the streets, she does learn firsthand about other vampires. She ends up running to this vampire named Bruce. And she tells him, you don't look like a Bruce. And says, well, what do I, look like? And she said, you don't kill like a Bruce. You kill like a killer. So that's what she nicknamed him, Killer. And then shortly after that, she actually finds out how predatory he is, how he's basically been following her for the last 5 towns, basically. He has actually preyed upon her for the most part. He's a little creepy. He knows she's young, but he's attracted to her. He's a predator. He literally is a predator. Beyond his vampire-ness, he's a weirdo. And he had a thing, and he is actually violent and controlling. So we didn't get all the way down into it, but we did get to see the beginnings of the violence and the control that was him, which it makes Lestat not look as bad as Bruce. But we need more information about Bruce and what actually went on, because she ended up getting away from Bruce at some point. But in the book, in her diary, there are 4 pages that are actually torn out of the diary, where those were torn out by Louis. Daniel and Louis get into a back and forth about where the 4 pages to see. This is what I'm talking about, Louis. When you're tailoring the story to be what you want. He said, I told you before, I will not have her exploited. I will not. And they going back and forth, back and forth. And honey, listen, Daniel is giving it to Louis about, trying to hide pieces of the story. The next thing you know, Louis didn't heard enough. Louis causes Daniel Parkinson's attack. And his hand is shaking, and Louis looking at it, and we knew Louis was controlling it, which was very mean. Very mean. He pushed him again, because that daughter of his, honey. And I said, this part was deep. This was deep. He pushed him into that. Remember, Louis has a mean piece in there. He has a streak in there when you get too close to things that he cares about. But Louis is really actually a good person. So he knew he was out of order for doing that to Daniel. Once he stopped it. He stopped it. And I said, listen, Daniel is who Daniel is. Daniel will take some shit, but he ain't gonna take everything. Baby, I said, okay. We made a stop. Daniel was trying to gather himself. Louis is standing there, and Rashid is standing right beside Louis, and he has his hand on his shoulder. Now he comforting Louis. Like Louis did that to Daniel, but Rashid is comforting Louis because you done upset my Louis, honey. When I tell you that Daniel stood up, I said, what was Daniel going to do? Baby, Daniel walked over there to Louis and smacked the cowboy shit out of Louis. And I said, yes, God. He slapped Daniel. Daniel slapped Louis' face. It said, oh, like, how dare you, bitch? Slapped his face. I was like, that's what you get. And old fine Louis, honey, Louis looked at him like, now I will pull your whole head off. But there's that part of Louis that you knew you were out of order for doing that to that man. You knew you were out of order for doing that. It wasn't even that deep. The conversation, the little tiff that y'all were having wasn't even that deep. And that was real jive that you did that. But he slapped his goddamn face, and he deserved it. And he knew he deserved it. So I was here for that. But that goes into what I kept saying to you all before about the respect and the bond that is being created between Daniel and Louis. And Louis knew he overstepped, and because he could have went, he could have killed Daniel, but for what? You out of order. Slap the goddamn shit out of you. That's what you get. Don't cross the line again. Don't make me slap your face again. Move it on. Daniel got it. Leave my daughter alone. Don't exploit my daughter. If she gets exploited, let the people do it. You don't do it. If I say I don't want to talk about that, I don't want to talk about it. Whew, it's too much. Anyway, moving on. So Louis is going on for all this time that she's gone. It's been a couple of years. She's been gone, carrying on. He's following newspaper writings of unexplained killings and different things like that. He's trying to track her and everything like that. So that's what Louis doing. And at the same time, Lestat is still fussing about not being sexed by Louis. Louis is basically grown out of love somewhat for Lestat. They've grown apart even more. And he just is over it. He's over Lestat's mean nature. He's going through it because he's missing Claudia. And Lestat is just not in tune with that at all. He wants what he wants. He really wants to forget all about Claudia. And he's glad she's gone. But he wants Louis back, you know, in his grips. But the whole thing of him not being sexed, he's really having an issue with it. Yeah. And that was the other thing. Right before Claudia left, when they were going back and forth and carrying on. No, I'll get to that anyway. Anyway, she left. That was that. We'll get to that part. I was ready to run ahead. Anyway, okay. So Louis ends up getting a phone call from Grace. He goes and he meets Grace down at like a mausoleum, down where the mama is buried. He gets down there where Mama is buried and look on the mausoleum. She says, well, me and Levi got an offer to go up north for some work, and that's what we're going to do. But she basically needed closure and what she had done. She said, because you're not my Louis. You're not the Louis that I sat across the dinner table from. I don't know who you are, but you're not him. She's like, it is me. I'm right here. She's like, no, you're not my Louis. And I don't know what you did with my Louis, but this is how it's got to be. Look on the same stone, the same headstone as Mama. She has Louis's name carved on there, and that is her closure. And she is leaving behind. She will be the, there is no surviving members in her mind of their family there in their town. She's gone. She's going, moving on up north and taking her children with her and her husband. And that's it. That's all. Leaving everything behind. Everything died behind. All her siblings and her mama and they papa. So I was like, oh, so he was really going through with that. At this point, Claudia has already made her escape back away from Killa. And she's been tracking Louis. And she actually seen that exchange between him and Grace. And she realized in that moment that she was made to fill the void of the lost companionship he had with his sister. And she ends up going home. She ends up returning home. But she returned home not to be at home. She returned home to get Louis and continue on. She came to get her daddy and move on. And they both get away from Lestat. Well, when she goes in there and she's having this whole conversation and she apologized, to Lestat and Louis, and Lestat from the door, he ain't feeling her. He told her, apology not accepted. And they're going back and forth. They're having this little exchange and she's talking to him quietly, but he could see it. He's like, what the hell y'all talking about? And she's saying, you need to leave with me. You need to leave with me. This, that, thing, and the other. And Lestat starts screaming at Louis. Are you serious? After 1,000 nights of sobbing and this, that, and the other, and the first time she comes back at her, you set your eyes on her, you think you're going to leave me? I said, And baby, when I tell you, this is when we went from Claudia in a domestic violence situation, we went into a fiercely, and I say fiercely ferocious domestic violence situation between Lestat and Louis. When I tell you Lestat beat Louis's ass, oh, baby, they tore that house down. And Louis can't whoop Lestat at all. And Louis doesn't feed off of people. So he's weak. He's weaker than Lestat anyway. So even because when they were as mortals, Louis would have beat the shit out of Lestat. But in that supernatural realm, baby, time and tenure. Lestat, he beat. beat him down like an old nasty piece of housewife, beating down. It was really unmerciful the way he beat him. I was like, it was disturbing. And then, Claudia's like screaming, no, 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 no. It was a whole scene of domestic violence. That's what it was. It was a very ferocious, savage depiction of domestic violence with children present. Not president, present. It was bad. It was disturbing. Toward the end, they're outside, and he literally had dug his fingernails and cuffed Louis up under here and was literally dragging him. And he's bleeding all up, dragging him down the little walkway. And Claudia says, let him go. He didn't even do anything. It was me. It was me. And because she spoke it out loud. Come and leave with me before he actually jumped on. Because what he did was, when she spoke it, Lestat jumped over to where she was and grabbed her by her neck and was choking her. And that's when Louis told him, take your goddamn hands off of her. And he jumped on Lestat to make Lestat get off of Claudia. And then he got that ass whooping. But he dragged him. And then he took him, and remember how when they got together, he floated him up in the air? Well, he floated him way up above the clouds. And he told him, he was like, just go ahead and admit it. Admit it. He's biting him and all this kind of carrying on. But he can't do it. He couldn't kill him. He couldn't drain him and kill him. And you could see Louis was all bumped up and lumped up and eyes blacked and swollen. He just wouldn't do it. He wouldn't kill him. And he told me, he said, go ahead. He needed him to do, just go far enough, do something to really trigger me enough to really hurt you up. The sadistic part, he took pleasure in the actual beating and slamming them through walls and all that. That was like, he was getting off on that. But to actually killing, he needed him to really go over the line. And so he told me, he said, tell me that you will never love me the way that I love you. Because that was going to be enough to take him over the side. But he can't really say that because, again, he does actually love him. He does love him. But you piss me off. He feels loyal to him. It's a lot of that twisted mess he got going on. But he told him, he said, let go of me. And he said, as you wish. And he dropped him. And he dropped him, and it was so ugly because he dropped him and he fell outside the house on the ground. His whole body was all broken. And before he actually took him up, that's what Claudia said, leave him alone, do me, because it was me that you wanted. And he told me, he said, trust me, it was never you. I never wanted you, child. Took him up there. He dropped him. His whole body was broken. It was just like when Paul fell off the house and was broken. I said, oh, Lestat, you dirty dog. He literally, when they showed the overhead of it, it looked exactly the way that Paul went out. But again, Louis didn't die, but Paul did. I mean, the body, everything, how they were all broke up and everything. Just like when Paul fell off the house. I said, oh gosh, you are so shady. So shady. And then he came on down. And I said, he's just jealous. He's literally jealous of the connection between Claudia and Louis. He came down, he looking at him, and she looking at him. I said, girl, that just further. Claudia hates Lestat. I think that stamped it to where she didn't have him to do anyway. That took it all the way over the side. She literally hates Lestat. And guess what? So do I. Can't stand him. Anyway, that's it. And that's all for episode 5. So I will see you guys when episode 6 rolls around. Even though Claudia didn't die, I still not happy with her character and what it is versus what it was originally. Still feel the same way. I still am not. Nope. But anyway, all right. I will talk to you all in episode 6. Later.